and live your life today. It doesn't matter what they say.
Right. Well, welcome to another episode of Red Lotus Life. We are so excited for this episode. I actually have been looking forward to this for a really long time. So before I introduce our guest today, just to tell you a little bit about Red Lotus Life, I'm an advanced spiral practitioner. This is my lovely co-host over here, Sara Elizabeth Hoffman. She is a spiral practitioner and also womb spiral practitioner. And together we come together and create Red Lotus Life. This is a special place where we actually support survivors of domestic violence, abuse, and trafficking. And it's just what we've cultivated here over the years. I mean, since 2018 has been just an incredible place to be. One of the things that we like to do is actually provide resources in the resource playlist, and that is one of the episodes that you're listening to today. So welcome, Jen Torres.
Welcome.
She's our beautiful guest today that is a human design expert. She's a dear friend and sister of mine, and I know that she knows Sara Elizabeth too. And it's just, she is the host of She's a God podcast, and we've worked together professionally and personally, and you're one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. So I'm just really excited to bring you on today.
Oh, well, I'm super excited to be here. I can't say enough about Lori and Sara and everything that they do with this platform. And I'm sure if you're watching this right now, I'm sure you watched previous episodes with them. And it's one of my favorite things to do, to just absorb the knowledge that goes back and forth so seamlessly between the two of you. And
thank you.
Excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited. I mean, this has actually been a long time coming. Jen and I have talked about this for years, and I feel like Sara and we've talked about doing something like this with you for a long time as well. So today we're actually going to be talking about self-clearing. We're going to be talking about emotional clearing and also human design and how we use human design and emotional clearing, self-clearing with survivors and also with ourselves in our daily life. And I think a lot of people that even if you know human design, you may not be familiar with all the different ways that we can use human design. And if you're very new to human design, then welcome, because you're about to go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited to be sharing space with you all today. Basically, what I do is I am a human design reader certified through Jenna Zoe and DayLuna, and I've been doing this for years now, being a reader. I also hold sister circles, and I host the She's a God podcast, where I talk a lot about it's more untethered information, like untethered me on the podcast. And I talk just a lot about like the spiritual journey and like my journey so far. And so that's really what I do. And I met Lori through the spiral and hiring her on for the spiral, and it was like the best thing I ever did in my life. I'm sure we will get into it. And then eventually, after working with Lori on projects and different things, I met Sara, which was amazing, and that's how we connected. So it's a little bit about me, and that's how I met Lori and how I met Sara.
Yeah, it's been such an incredible journey, because it's been beautiful to witness you and the growth that has happened since any of these tools actually came into your life. I know that when we met, you knew human design. You were actually giving readings. Were you giving readings at that time, or were you getting ready to?
I was giving readings, but at the time I was only doing it for people that were like friends and family. But I was already certified through Jenna Zoe. And I was on my human design journey at that point. So I was already doing readings, but I was still pretty early on, and still really shedding a lot during that time, and doing a ton of study too. So yeah, right about that point, I was getting started. Yeah.
And this is why I love you, because you said you were doing your study. You're constantly studying, you're constantly growing and deepening your knowledge of all things. And that's why, the She's a God podcast is actually one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. I'm constantly sharing it with others because it's so real and raw, and the topics that you have on there and the people that you have on there are not the norm, and I love it.
Yeah, it's been honestly one of my more favorite things to do is just to get on there and talk, not just about like what I have going on with my journey so far and like what I've been different challenges that I'm overcoming, but also to bring on people and speaking with them. I've had Lori on the show twice already to talk about what she has going on in her journey so far. And there's so much knowledge that people pick up just from conversation, which is so beautiful, even with platforms like this through YouTube and everything else, is just conversation and words that allow people just hearing them. It expands a person and helps them to just, okay, like on to the next thing, on to the next thing. That's what's so great about these conversations.
Yeah. Would you mind sharing a little bit about, I feel like people really know emotional clearing and self-clearing at this point. We can go into that a little bit more, but can you explain what human design is so that people have an idea as we begin to just dive in?
So human design is your energy blueprint. And I always hesitate to say that because it's like so overused. People say that all the time, but I really don't know how else to explain it. To me personally, it's like a biohacking system, being able to see exactly how your energy is designed to be used every single day in order to open up greater flow in their life. What ends up happening is people learn about their design, and for them, more likely than not, they're like, yeah, duh. Like, I know this about myself. I've always felt this about myself, but just being able to hear it from someone else by getting a reading or even just downloading an app and hearing what your design is and starting to get familiar with how it is that your energy is designed to be used in every single day. That right there, it's really the awareness of that knowledge that gives you the permission to move forward with living out your energetic design without hesitancy and without feeling like you want to conform instead, because that's really what we're deconditioning from, is that feeling of actually what I was raised to do and the way that I was designed or told, the way that only way to be happy, only way to be successful, only way to experience love is by doing it this way. That part is the biggest part of deconditioning from human design. It like totally blows that apart. And instead it gives you your energetic design and it says, actually, this is how you're designed to be using your energy every single day. This is the science of your specific auric field, which is so fascinating because every single person has their own unique blueprint. So has their own unique chart, body graph. There's never been someone where I pulled their chart and I'm like, oh, okay, like this is the same exact chart as this person. No, something is different in that chart that makes that person unique to them. And that's really special to know that you have your own unique energy that is designed to be used a very specific way every single day to open up greater flow in your life. One thing I want to add to that is one of the things that human design would always say when I first started going down this path and on my human design journey is that we're not here to meet resistance in our life because we're these energetic beings. And I just would have to sit with that for a while because I'm like, what? Like, of course we're here to meet resistance. Like, this is a classroom and like we're here to come up against all of these obstacles and work through them. But really, it took me some years to actually understand what this lesson from Ra Guru, who is the founder of Human Design, was trying to say, which is that it's for us when we are allowing ourselves to live in our own unique blueprint, our own unique energy, we are moving through life with so much more greater expanded energetic flow in our life that we are moving forward in this way. And through that process, yes, we're meeting way less resistance. But even when we're coming up against something in our life, something tough, difficult, something that's really hard to face, we're moving through it with this flow energetically that we didn't even realize was possible. It's kind of like, oh my God, like actually this is an obstacle, but I'm moving through it in a different way because I'm living by my strategy and my authority. I'm recalling the lowest expression of my energy gifts. And I'm remembering that, okay, like I have this gift, but if I move through this obstacle in its lowest expression, it's gonna be hell. But if I move through it in its highest expression, I can open up greater energetic flow in this, and I can move through this obstacle with greater flow. And so for me, that's the biggest takeaway from a human design, because there is so much you can learn. So many people, when they pull their chart, a lot of times they just don't even look at it again for like a year because they're like, I don't even know what to do with this. But then a lot of times people come back to it and then they download an app or they start to listen to some YouTube videos and they keep going greater and greater into their design. And as they keep unfolding into this deeper knowledge of exactly how they're designed to show up and use their energy, these light bulb moments keep coming up. It just happened to me the other day where I was doing something and I'm like, I realized it was one of my energy gifts that I can't remember exactly what I was doing, that I was like, well, this is really rough. And I really want to try to remember right now, but it was something where I was like the first thing, and it wasn't even a conscious thing. It just like literally popped in my head out of nowhere. I wasn't trying to find the answer. It just popped in my head and out of nowhere. And I could see the reflection of my own energy expressing itself in its lowest expression in this situation that I was going through. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I know what this is. This is this channel or this gift. And actually, like, I just need to step into it in its highest expression. It was actually the fear of authority in human design. So it was one of the gates coming out of the spleen. And it's like, I realized like I was not to go deep, to segue too far, but really what I was realizing is what I would tend to do is take anybody who's like in a position of authority, and in my head, I create some sort of like wall between me and that person, and I do it in a way to protect myself. And it's because I do have this fear that of people, like a hierarchy type of situation. And I had to journal about it and say like, what is my fear here actually? Like, and it comes from childhood. Of course, I went down that, and you realize like, actually, no, like nobody can actually make me do anything in my life. So I am my ultimate authority. And so I don't need to put a wall between me and this person just because they're leading this thing in order to protect myself, because there's nothing that they can actually do to me. And it's just like, so that was just one small example of like how you keep living your design. It doesn't matter how many years it's been since the first day you pulled your chart. The more you dive in, the deeper you go, the more you start to bring in that awareness and anchor in that information, it starts to settle. And you're like, and then by nature, it'll automatically start to show you, okay, this is how I'm using this energy. This is in the highest expression. Let me shift into the highest expression. And through that way, it's not about not meeting that resistance. Of course, I was going to have a fear of this person leading this thing. By nature, I was working through that programming. There's always these obstacles that are going to come up in our life, in relationship with people, but it's just about the more you're able to anchor in this knowledge, whether it be through human design, astrology, whatever it is, you're able to hone in on this greater version of who you actually are so that you can become your ultimate, your highest self, so that when you are facing these challenges, it's not like an end all be all situation where you're ready to like throw in the towel and be like, oh my God, like this is too difficult. It shifts you into this way of just standing in your power where you're like, oh, okay, like actually I'm in control of this situation. There's nothing to fear here. And so from this space, I can keep moving forward. And even if these obstacles, it's okay because I know who I am, following my human design, working through my spiral, all of my things, and I can fully know I'm safe here because I know who I am. So that's really what human design is. It's a safe space for you to know who you are so that you can keep going deeper into your strengths, into your full embodiment of your energy, and to take back your power in that way and say, like, actually, like, this is who I am. And to keep opening up space for that to be real for you. And so I hope I didn't go too long there, but that's really what it is. That's really what human design is here to do, is to help you be free in your life. And it's here to help show you how to be sovereign in your relationships, in your business, and whatever it is you have coming up for you, so that you can keep higher, 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 keep moving up in your own evolution, in your own ascension of who you are. So, yeah.
I love your explanation. That's probably my favorite explanation of human design that I've ever heard, actually. It's so good. Keep going if you want to.
Well, this is what I love about Jen. This is why you are my go-to person with human design, because human design is actually just kind of like what you said. Like, I have mine here all the time. So this is what a chart looks like. And people look at that and then they're like, what is this? I don't even know, because it's so confusing and complex. And like, yes, it is, but also it's amazing. Sara Elizabeth and I actually discovered it at the same time. We were going through a mentorship where it was introduced to us. And the second that we found out about it, and it resonated with us so deeply, because it's just like what you said. It's the design of who you are. It is, you talk about the auric field, and I always say it's like the manual to who you are. It's how you're wired. And whenever in relation to like survivors and how we use it, how Sara Elizabeth and I use it in our own lives and also in the lives of the clients and people that we work with, is that when you are in an abusive situation or a place where it's toxic and you're literally being conditioned every single day, all day long, and you're told what you can't be. So when you're talking about conditioning, it's like, yep, that goes right into play with everything, because we're conditioned that we're too much, we can't do this. We start to not trust who we are and our instincts and our special gifts, like what you just shared. We start to question that and doubt that. And that's exactly what happens. And it happens on a very unconscious and subtle level. So whenever I found this and discovered this, and oh my gosh, this is me. This is so me. And it tells you like how you're able to make decisions. When you're talking about the inner authority and the strategy, it's like it tells you how to begin to trust yourself again. And I do say tell you, because once you learn human design, you can't deny it. Like you can't. And so when you're able to actually trust in this, and then you use it to embody it, like what you said, embody it, and you start to use it in your everyday life when there are obstacles, or even just what do you want for dinner? You can experiment with so many different things. You begin to trust that, you embody it, and now you go, oh, now you start to remember who you are as this conditioning falls away, and you begin to connect with self again in a totally different way.
It's like permission. It's full permission to really embody your sovereignty. You really see all of the energy leaks and where you're giving your power away. And it's just so incredibly validating, especially when you do, like when you have those aha moments and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is me. Like, this is so me. I resonate with this. And you really feel that in your power center, in your solar plexus. And then you're able to just move so much more freely and with so much more ease in the world. It's amazing.
Mm.
hmm
Yeah. And if there's anything we've learned, right, like over the last, I don't know, 4 years, let's say, since 2020, it's that people ultimately want to be free. Like they don't want to have to make choices that don't feel right for them, whether that be from government or whether it be from relationship, or anything like that. They want to have freedom and they want to make decisions from what they feel inside. And then that's, I think, where people start to dig. And they're like, wait a minute, what do I feel inside? What is my intuition? How do I find out more about this? And that's from that space, that's when we start seeing people clicking on YouTube videos like this or listening to podcasts or like pulling their chart because they're like, I know it, I feel it. I know what it is to be free and how to make my own choices and what it means when someone's trying to enslave me or when something doesn't feel energetically correct for me. I can feel it in my gut. If I have sacral authority, I know that feeling. But then when you put words to it, which it takes me back to what I was saying when we first started talking about this, platforms like this, speaking, really putting words to anything is what gives people the awareness of it for them to say, okay, I know that I have this fear, or I know that my inner authority is emotional. I've always known that. Like, and how do I navigate it? How do I move past it? And that's when you can start to pull back the layers of your design and fully start to embody what it is that you by nature hold within your field.
It's like those codes, the codes that are held within your DNA.
Well, that's exactly what this is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I love it. I think there's so many ways that we could even talk about this. Human design really is a lifelong study. I tell people that all the time whenever it gets introduced because a lot of people actually do grasp onto it once they actually begin to understand it and they start to learn the basics of their profile, of their inner authority, their strategy. The not self theme is huge, right? To begin to live your life that way. And it's just, it's fascinating in so many ways because you can go into the energy centers and the gates and all the channels, everything that you just spoke about. You can go deep with it. And it changes lives. It's changed my life and how I operate. And how I do relate to others because it also has even in here my communication. Like, how do I best communicate? Prior to me knowing about this with communication, because communication is huge to me, there was two things that would happen. I would get misunderstood a lot, and the intent of what I was coming with was always misunderstood as well. And so what I discovered with this is that I actually have a lot of timing gates, which means because people would think I'd be a know-it-all or I was trying to tell them what to do or I was controlling when my intention was really, I just want to share some things with you or my experience because I'm a 1-3. So my 3 line, I want to share my experience with you so that you don't have to go down the same route, make the same mistakes, basically. That's like the 3 line, right? So let me share my experience with you. And what I notice is that if I am not asked, then yeah, it comes across as I am a know-it-all. I'm a know-it-all and I think I know better and da-da-da. But if somebody asks me, then they value the information and my experience that I had gone through. And so that
The
changed
invitation.
everything. Yeah. And that actually changed things like the relationship with my daughter. My daughter and I, we don't have the best relationship. Well, we do. We have a great relationship. But, we kind of have that mother-daughter friction sometimes, what happens. And now I know that I just listen and I just hold space until she says, well, what do you think, Mom? And then that's my invitation to now share, well, when I was your age or whatever like that. And so that it's helped us a lot because now we don't have those, like I'm not misunderstood. And now she values that, but I also know when to hold back and when she's just really wanting her mom to listen.
hmm Those are those like projected channels too, right? Like those, I mean, there's so much within a chart that you can keep just releasing shedding the layers, similar to spiral, right? Spiral is like
Mhm.
a whole deconditioning process where you're releasing everything that is no longer serving. Human design is the same thing, except it's more so telling you this is how you're designed to use your energy every single day. And then from that space, you're by nature, that awareness kicks in and you are just shutting everything, that all the ways in which you are told you have to be, and then you're aligning with the conversations even that are more energetically aligned, like Lori with her daughter, let's say, and you're saying, this is more energetically aligned for me to approach the situation this way versus maybe just telling her everything, having her instead ask and be invited into that genius is more in alignment for my energy. So yeah, so it's a beautiful process, and it's a journey. I'm not gonna lie. Like I said, I've been on this path with human design for years, and there's still times when I'm like, I feel like I have something coming up, and I look at my chart and I'm like, oh boy, like I'm in the lowest expression of this gift, and like I really need to journal it out and sit with this and figure out why I'm letting it happen, and then just continuing to move forward with what's energetically aligned for you versus what's not energetically aligned for you, because that's when you meet the resistance.
Yeah. Would you mind sharing what you mean by journaling it out? Because this is such an incredible tool that I don't think most people realize. This is such an amazing process to go through. And so I'd love it if you would share, like, what is your process of journaling it out? Because, yeah, like I said, I think most people think that they have to go have a therapy session or something like that, but really the therapy session is with self, right? And a journaling session. So how do you do that?
So typically for me, the way it starts out is I just want to say first and foremost that I was never ever that person that wrote down my feelings. I've never owned a diary in my entire life, and I never really spoke much about how I feel about anything. So I'm not very connected to understanding why I feel the way I feel. Sometimes I've been with my partner for a very long time, and thank the gods, like he's actually able to tell me sometimes, because I'll just feel
Mhm.
myself in a rut about something. And he's like, oh, you're angry. And I'm like, no, I'm not. He's like, yes, you are. You're pissed. And I'm like, oh, shoot, like I am mad. So sometimes I say that to people because there are people out there that may be listening who don't feel connected to when they feel certain ways, and they don't know why they feel certain. They're almost so blind to, they're in that role all the time, which when I was going through my spiral with clearing with Lori, that was what came up for me all the time, was I was always in a role. So sometimes you just catch yourself just pushing yourself into these roles, and you don't realize what is wrong with you, like until you have that reflection. But when you're able to get that reflection, or you feel it within yourself, for me, the way my process goes is to journal it out. And so like I mentioned, not somebody who is used to this, but I started doing it a couple of years back, and it completely changed my life. My journal entries went from 1 to 2 sentences to just say, like, I don't know why I'm writing this, but I'm just writing because I don't know what else to do and I don't know what to say. And sometimes I would just start writing song lyrics because, like, I didn't know what to actually put in this book. Like, it didn't come natural to me to just start writing down how I felt. And then eventually, after like a couple of weeks of this, I kept coming back to it, and I started to just write down how I felt about things. And I would say, this happened today and that made me feel frustrated. And, it made me feel like I wasn't valued in this situation. Or sometimes I would realize I would journal it out by reflecting on how I showed up that day. I have a 5 line in my profile, so there tends to be projection in my daily life. And so sometimes I just have to keep coming back to who I am, because I have to keep telling myself, like, actually, this is what I like. Or this is how I showed up today that made me proud. Or this is what I enjoy so much. This is what lights up my soul. So as you're going on this process, if you're not familiar with journaling and you're allowing yourself to shift into it, just first and foremost, let yourself play in the energy of journaling, but then know that it can be such a healing process to journal something out. And if you are also on a spiral journey as well, you may find yourself including spiral in this process, because that's what happened to me. Is I learned how to do self-clearing through Lori. So what I would do is, if something comes up for me now, like the other day, me realizing I was creating a wall between me and this person just because they were a leader in this thing, and I was afraid to be ruled over. And I feel like that's not going to let me be myself, or I can't like give somebody my power. It wasn't any of that. But when I realized I was just having a fear around it, I went to spiral, and I'm like, okay, like what is happening with me right now? Am I connected to me? Yes. Like, do I have a block against authority? Yes. Like, where is it? Is it in fire, water, earth? You know, you go through the charts, and then I'm like, okay, this is where it is. And I'm writing it out. And then eventually I get to a place where I know what emotion is stuck. I know the block that's there. And I could just start picking it apart from there and saying like, okay, why do I feel this way? How can I move forward? And then a lot of times what ends up happening for me is I start realizing there's a lot that I have a fear about in this situation. So I take those fears after writing them down, and I switch them up, and I turn them into positive affirmations. And I just will say like, okay, I have a fear of authority. Actually, I don't have a fear of authority, and I'll switch it around to, I am the authority of my life. I know,
Love that.
I am present. I am safe. I am the authority in my life, and nobody can take that from me. My soul is my guidance. And I like go into positive affirmations from there, and just doing that. I mean, people talk about therapy. If you can learn to journal and learn to journal things out in that process, whatever way feels good and normal to you, that's super healing. So that's the way I do it. I'm curious how you guys do it.
I don't know. Do you want to share yours, Sarah?
I do it in a very similar manner, especially if I have something, an emotion that is coming up, or I know there's something there, there's a block. It might be anger, it might be fear, just like you're saying, and a lot of times that authority, or even something that I had come up recently was a little bit of comparisonitis, and I knew that it wasn't the other person. I had this conversation with Lori. I knew that there was no projection there actually. So I knew it was all me, because I wasn't projecting. I was just in observation of what I was actually feeling and what I was moving through. For me, yes, journaling, but also I tend to, I have I'm going to lose my words now. I use my voice. A defined throat. That's what I'm looking for. In human design, I have a defined throat. And so for me, when I process out loud, it allows me to really drop in and be able to, it happens in my head a lot, and then I can journal and make connections. So that's what it looks like for me. And I might go, go through the charts, do some self-clearing, just like you're sharing, and then just be able to release it. We're collapsing it to a place of neutrality so that we can then create the new neural pathways, right? And I absolutely love, and I love the way that you shared it as far as the correlation between how you're using human design as well as the self-clearing at the same time. For me, the human design and self-clearing, or the spiral, they go hand in hand. That's why we love the work that we do, for them to just come together, that they marry together so well. I guess that's kind of the word that I've been using lately, is that marriage of the two. And then like throw in gene keys and you've got the perfect trifecta.
Yeah. I love it. I think it's really great. I love that you even started talking about self-clearing too, and muscle testing and all of that, Jen, and bringing the spiral into it, because everyone knows by now, I feel like with me, that I just know nonsense, and I just like the most efficient way to get from here to here. And that's the path I'm going to take. I don't really like to mess around or anything like that. And it's not spiritual bypassing. It's just more like, how can I get from here to here? And time's a thing for me. Like time is always a thing for me. I just don't want to waste the time. And I know that's what Jen and I talk about a lot too, because she's about time. But I will take my human design and then I will do the exact same thing. I will take a look at it and okay, because this is how I live my life is by my design. I live in my design every single day. And then if I'm using my not self theme, which is frustration, so anytime I'm frustrated, there's something going on, right? There's something happening in my life that is not in alignment. And so then I do it. Start going through the thing. Well, why am I frustrated? Oh, I'm frustrated because of this. Okay. So, and I go straight to it. Can I clear it? Can I clear it? And then I go through the charts and I start doing all of it. And for those of you that do know Spiral or are in any of our programs with us, then you know that there's a process. There's a process that you go through with the charts. You know, if you're in the earth element, there's something going on with your foundation. There's a reason why you're not feeling stable or secure. And if you're in the stomach element or the stomach organ, then you know it's having to do with your environment and how you're processing information, what's happening, what is frustrating me in my environment right now. And then I can go through the emotion and I could say, okay, yep, that makes sense. And then I get to clear it with an acupressure point.
Yep.
And I just go, yep, this is it. And now if it's something, because that can be something that's just like little, right? That's happening in my life, like something that's just super subtle that I was like, okay, I'm irritated right now. What's happening? And let's just say it could even be, this is also what's nice about human design. This is not with clearing, but if you are irritated and you're embodied in any way, because this is what this work does, right? It gets you embodied. You can realize that you're irritated just because of the tag on your shirt. And then you just rip the tag off and you're like, okay, now I'm better. And everything's right in the world again, which is really nice. But if there's something that's really big that's going on in my life, then that's when I do break out the journals. I have a million journals for different things, but that's what I do. Just like what kind of the same process of Jen. If I can't quite figure it out, I just start writing and I don't know why I'm writing, but I know I need to. And I just start out this way. And then I go deeper and deeper into it. But I also was very out of touch with my feelings. I was somebody that being raised in Japanese, you just don't let people know what's happening on the inside. Like no one sees you break, that type of thing. And so when I first started to do this, oh, and here's the other thing too, I wanted to share since our audience is survivors, it wasn't safe for me to actually journal.
Right.
I mean, if I wrote anything down, the person that I was in a relationship with would actually go like this, you know, with a pencil and would actually see what I wrote down and things like that. So it wasn't safe for me to do that. I really had to get to a place where I felt safe that no one would be able to see. Like, I guess my privacy, really, it doesn't matter what I'm writing down, but it's my privacy. But once I was able to move past that part and I was able to go, oh, this is a safe practice for me. Now it just flows. Like I said, I have 20 journals for everything. They get filled all the time. And it's actually really quick now whenever I do the clearing. So if I do a clearing, self-clearing first, and then I go sit down to journal, now it can happen in just a few sentences. So I think that's what's really beautiful about self-clearing and why I love marrying the two. Is because if you can use human design to really notice what you notice and observe and embody your life. And then when you bring self-clearing in, that creates the space. So you're in a place of neutrality. There's not a lot of emotion. So when you go to journal, now it's like that. And you get to the point real fast. Anyway, that's how I do it.
And then you get to release it so that you are actually living in your human design, which is my favorite part.
It's all about sovereignty and freedom. That's like what it really comes down to with all of it. And it's so interesting, Lori, what you said there about not feeling safe enough to journal. And that's a real thing, right? So, and I think that that's why learning your human design, whether it be through an app or even, understanding how to self-clear. I know you guys have like a retreat coming up soon too, where you can learn about that. And it's just all of these things are things you can do for you. And I like what Lori said too about the privacy of being on that journey. And it's not some big announcement you have to make if it doesn't feel safe to you to do that. But it is something that's yours and that you can work on, in the privacy when you do have alone time, and allow yourself to continue to go deeper and deeper into it. And I think from that space, I keep talking about this like shedding that happens, but it's so true. You keep releasing like all of these things. And then that's when life starts to change. That's really when you're going to see life start to change. And you're going to start realizing you're not really afraid of much. And you'll start realizing you're not afraid to make changes in your personal life and move on from people who have been holding you back. And that's when stuff starts to feel different. So if you're somebody who's listening to this and maybe you're trying to put it all together, why it makes sense for your life, understand that the end result, as you're moving through this process of understanding your design, journaling it out, learning how to self-clear, going through the spiral, you're getting closer and closer to the life that you dream of. And all of those constructs, all of those, things that are holding you back in your life that you feel like, oh, I can never get rid of this person. I'm stuck with this person, or I can never get out of this horrible relationship. I'm not brave enough. That's when you start to embody a version of yourself that you didn't even realize existed. You're like, all of a sudden you wake up and you are that person, which I know on the spiritual path, once you start really going into this, that's something that happens by nature. So you start to all of a sudden wake up and you're like more deeply embodied in this energy that's your authentic way of being. And it becomes easier. You'll realize certain people will walk away. There's certain friends, people in your life, bad family relationships, bad personal relationships. These people start to leave because you no longer are an energetic match for their crazy. So suddenly you realize by nature, you're just by becoming more of who you are, your life starts to change and everything starts to shift. Everything becomes easier. You move into this state of less resistance, like I was talking about in the beginning. And it doesn't feel difficult always to get there. Of course, shadow work is not fun. But you will realize that by nature, you're moving into this space that you're waking up every day to closer and closer to a life that you've always wanted. And Lori was saying too, something in the beginning about, you're like, oh, you're so different from like when I first met you. So you all wouldn't believe, like when I first met Lori, I was so hardened. Like I was so skeptical of everything, like everybody, every person. I didn't trust anybody. Like, so when I went online, my spirit was like saying yes. This is just a quick sideline story, but like how I ended up in spiral is that I told spirit, I said, well, if I hear the word spiral 3 times within the next week, I will do the spiral. I don't even know this woman, but I will meet her online and I will go through with it and I will pay to do this and I will go on this journey. Within the next 3 days, I heard the word spiral 3 times from random people, completely random people. One of them was bagging my groceries at the store. And I don't even know what he said, but he said something about spiral. And I was like, what? So like then when I went on met Lori, I was so hardened. Why? From holding my mother's and her mother's and my dad's mother, all their lineage of abuse. I personally have never been abused, but I was holding on to all of their abuse. And so I didn't trust anybody. I was so mean to my partner. I don't even know how this man lasted. And so I was so horrible. Like, and it's not because I was like a bad person. I was like kind. Don't get me wrong. I was kind. I'm a great mother, all these things. But like I had this hardened exterior that like I could not like break out of no matter how. And I knew it. Like I knew it was there and I couldn't like get out of it. And so when Lori met me, I'm looking at her like, is this woman gonna try to like do something? Like, I don't know what I thought was gonna happen. You know, Lori, if you know Lori, Lori's like the nicest person on the planet. She literally has like the gift of altruism, like in her sun or one of her primary planets, where I'm like, you're literally here to just be a saint. And so Lori's like the nicest person. And I had so much hardening to get past. And by like level 3, I just had a total come apart. Like, I was like on the floor crying like every day. But really, it was just because I was releasing all of that energy that wasn't even mine. It was my mom. And I don't even know, and my mom's mom, and all of the abusive relationships that went down in my matriarchal line. And so, yeah, I don't know how I got on that, but I guess what I'm just trying to say is it is a process, but allowing yourself to take a step forward every day on it, continuing to trust your guidance is how you get to that place. I would not be doing anything I'm doing right now. I have a podcast. I like do meet with clients all of the time. Like I would not have this life had I not discovered one, my human design, but really seriously, spiral. Had I not gone through that process, there is no way that I would have ever been able to live like as my authentic self had I not gone through that process. And like Lori is an amazing person, and Sarah, amazing people. These are amazing people. So it's just being brave enough, like having the courage to do it for yourself is, I think, the ultimate legacy a person can leave for themselves is just taking the steps to release that baggage and to fully step into who it is that you know you are. So much freedom in that space. And yeah, I would not, there's no way I'd be doing any of this had I not worked with Lori through that process.
Well,
And I just said the same words to her, I believe, yesterday.
well,
1000%.
thank you both for being on this journey with me, because honestly, same, right? This same, wouldn't be here in this space. But I remember, Jen, I remember the first message I received from you was, I just heard this. I don't know why. I think you even said it. I don't even know why I'm reaching out, but it sounds like I need to. My guides are saying some things. And you're like, and you didn't know me. We didn't know each other at all. I think you found me off of the Spiral website, even, not even my own, I think. So it's one of these things again of like hearing that call, right? You hear the call to do any of the work that you're feeling drawn to. And I love witnessing your journey, because now you are 100, you just exactly what you said. Yeah, you had that wall up, right? You had the trust was like people had to earn it. I remember it was like a thing where it was like, yeah, people had to earn that. And it was so beautiful to witness the softening and the heart opening, actually, and also being able to receive. I think that was another thing of you being able to receive love from people in a totally different way. And for the acceptance too of like your own gifts and feeling safe enough and vulnerable enough to even share your own gifts with the world, because you knew how powerful you were. You knew how potent you were, all of those things. But what this process did for you was go, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be sharing this with the world. And I have these messages to say and to speak and to express. And it's beautiful because you impact so many people on such a global level now. It's unreal. just to witness like where you were and where you are now. Like you are known globally for the work that you do. And I think that's just, it's so powerful because you are a powerful person that's here to really impact the world. So, and I love that you just continue to do the self-clearing and everything else too, because just like what you said, it's like this impact, this expansion, right? Of having the courage to keep going and to keep moving. And also, I don't know, things just kind of bounce off. Just what you said, people leave your life whenever we begin to start doing this work. And it feels hurtful at the time, but then the people that you end up meeting and connecting with after you do this work, when you're in your authentic self, is so different. I think I actually heard something the other day. Can I go off on a little thing real quick? Because this is very alive for me right now, because I think it was either yesterday or the day before. I don't know. Time's a thing, so I'm not sure. But
Right.
I saw somebody talking about this where they were saying, you know, when you start to work on yourself and you start to actually heal and you start to show up and you're, you know, in a way that is sovereign and high self-esteem and confidence and authentic and pure, when you start to show up in your pure self, you do have old relationships that start to fall away. And a lot of times we think it's because we take it as rejection or being kicked out of the tribe or something like that, because we have these big feels about it, right? It hurts, it's painful. But what that does, when we start to open up, when people start to meet us as we are now, it's so different, because then we actually get to receive authenticity. And I never quite thought about that until the other day when I was really processing what I heard this person talking about. And it's always like, we always say, well, people leave your life because, you know, we're just not an energetic match anymore. And we're, you know, this and that, or it's unhealthy relationships. But really, when you think about the other part of that and being able to receive authenticity in a way that you never have before, that's like a whole new thing, to actually have these authentic relationships. And so I just want to say thank you to the two of you, because you both have really witnessed me on my journey as well. And this authentic, the more I lean into the authenticity, the more I am receiving it back from the two of you. So I just want to say thank you on that, because it's, none of us would be here. I wouldn't be here where I am today if you didn't fully accept me for who I am. So
we love you so much.
Yes.
no. Can I speak to something else real quick that you talked about, Jen? You talked about the abuse in your lineage, right? And so it is this ancestral cycle that ends up coming. And even though you may not have experienced it yourself, you were still holding that. It was still showing up in your life. Do you mind just speaking on that part a little bit? Maybe more, so people can begin to understand that ancestral emotional trauma and things like that, and how it just showed up for you, even though you haven't experienced that.
Yeah, totally. So this was, I think, something I always knew that like was happening with me, but I didn't have the consciousness or the awareness to even speak words to it. I always knew that I was unnecessarily hardened, and I didn't know why. Like I was like, I have all of this, especially towards men. I had a lot of feelings around, I can't trust them. There's no good men in the world that like want the best for me. They're always going to try to hold me back and like hurt me. These thoughts that I don't even know where they came from. I mean, I know that my mom, like when me and my sister were kids, because she grew up in a very abusive household and then had a very abusive relationships as well, physically abusive, emotionally abusive. My all my grandmothers, as far back as I know, were physically abused, sexually abused. So this is all stuff I've known forever. And I knew that my generation was the first generation where I did not hold this abuse. I did not have that. I didn't physically feel it from anybody. So, but I had this hardening on me and I did not know where it came from. Like, and I always knew I had it because I couldn't open myself up to anybody. And I could not ever have like even friends, like girlfriends. Like I could never, I remember watching, this is so random, but I remember being like 17 years old and watching, I had a job at like this little fashion store in the mall, and I was waiting for my car to warm up after work. And I watched this girl who I work with. She was gorgeous. This like really cool girl. I thought she was awesome and cool and everything. And I watched her. She was like, I remember her telling me, oh, I'm going to meet up with my friends. Okay, cool. So I was like waiting for my car to warm up and I saw her meeting her friends. And I like this image could not leave my mind because I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like they literally ran toward each other and like hugged each other. And we're like, oh my God, like, hey, like all this stuff. And I'm like, I thought that only happened in movies. Like, I don't know what it is to have a girlfriend tribe or have girlfriends that I could hug or be this close kind of. It was never in my life. I never had this. And it was always because there was part of me that felt like not safe, not safe, not safe. And it wasn't until we got to the sacral and spiral or it might have been the power center, the solar plexus. I can't remember. But I was doing a spiral clearing with Lori and I literally felt the energy of the lineage of like my maternal line, my mother, my grandmother, my great great grandmother. I felt like I physically became them in like a second. It was like I felt super hardened, like even toward Lori, even though I didn't say anything or would never disrespect her, but I felt this hardening come over me, like kind of like this feeling of I'm not going anywhere. Like you need me to protect you. And I just was like sitting there like, and Lori actually being the shaman that she is at heart, she was like, I literally feel like I don't know if you remember this, Lori, but she's like, I just seen you like shift into like your mom or something. And I was like, so funny. I was like, I literally just felt this thing come over me, like this protective barrier of something. Like, what is this? And I realized I'm holding on epigenetics down to all of these things in my maternal line and my paternal line coming from my grandmother on my dad's side. All of this energy holding me, making me so tough, so hardened, so mean. Like I was never mean to like girls. I was mean to guys. Like I was so mean to guys. And I would just be like, I just didn't trust them. I always had to have my own job, my own money, my own car. Like I was so independent, fiercely independent. And there's nothing wrong with that, but not in a healthy way. And it wasn't until we broke through that in the spiral that I realized I had these energetic cords similar to, I think what Sarah was explaining in the beginning about these lineages, these maybe that was a video I watched earlier. I don't know. There was like something earlier I watched was talking about these umbilical cords we have toward, these etherical, energetic umbilical cords we have to our lineage with our moms and our great grandmothers. And I could tell like that was being completely broken away from me in the best way. Like I was removing all of that heaviness. And that's when I was able to fully start to get downloads about like the work that I'm here to do with human design, with Sister Circle, with the podcast and talking to people and like having a spiritual business. It wasn't until I was able to break through that I started having the awareness of like who I was, because I was holding on to so much of like what everyone else had taught me and energetically and verbally about how I needed to show up in life to be safe. So So that's a huge part of it, with going through the medicine of spiral. Shout out to Dane Thomas, who created this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Shout out.
I remember that session actually, and I think that was the first time that any of this was actually enlightened. I think it was the first time that it was ever even like brought in, because at that time, yes, I was working with domestic violence survivors, but you weren't one of them, you know? And so for even that to come into play, I remember, and it was such a powerful time in your life just to even have that realization and to actually feel it, and then also to feel safe enough to let that go. And I
Mhm.
remember all this support that you had during that time too. So yeah, thank you for sharing that part.
I want to say too, it wasn't until recently, like only like a couple, maybe like 6 or 7 months ago, where I was talking to my partner and I made that connection. I was like, isn't it so weird how I found Lori to do my spiral clearing? And she specifically works with women of domestic violence. And like, I've never been personally through that experience, but all of the women in my family, as far back as I know, have. So it's like I
Of course.
purposely was placed in Lori's orb to work with her specifically because I was holding on to it as if it was my own.
Mhm.
So wild.
It is wild. And we always just go, yep, of course, right? We just trust, just trust the process.
Divine alignment.
Yeah. Well, um, there's so many more things that I would like to ask you, Jen, but I know that we're running out of time. Sara, was there anything that you wanted to share or to speak to before we begin to wrap up?
No, just thank you so much for allowing us to pick your brain and for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. I will say that in addition to the She's a God podcast, Jen has an amazing, is it a monthly transit? A monthly human design transit? I try to catch that all the time. It's so good.
It's
And I
usually
wanted to
like
say, check
every
it out.
other week about.
Every other week. Okay. Well, I always try to catch that. So if you are able to catch that, it's amazing. I highly recommend. Um, yeah, just
Mhm.
so much gratitude. So much gratitude. I'd love to have you back on.
Yeah,
I feel
would
like
too.
I feel like there's a whole nother um part of the conversation that we could dive into. Some things that I'd like to bring up as far as like actually how we're using human design relative to domestic violence, but that's an entirely different conversation. So love you so much.
Mhm.
I'm game for whatever. And thank you so much for having this space to be able to have these open conversations. And I just wanted to say, you can find me on the She's a God podcast, but you could also, on my website, she'sagod.com. If you are interested in a reading, Lori has a special link. It is actually LK20. And that'll give you 20% off of a reading if you're interested in diving deeper and going into your design and learning more about that and connecting in that way. So yeah, lots of different ways.
Mhm. Yeah, we definitely need to have you on again. And thank you for sharing all the ways you're on all the socials and everything else and all the audio platforms for your podcast. I do want to ask you, since Sara, you brought up the transit, would you mind explaining what the transit is? Because it is so helpful in our life.
It is.
It is like, I always like to say, it's like having your umbrella when there's a chance of rain. If you know what's going on in human design, then you'll be able to know it's kind of like that flow, right? There's less resistance because now you're going to, when it happens, you're going to go, oh, okay, yep, that's right. I remember Jen talking about that.
Yes. So this is a really fun way to, one, learn about your energy chart. So the transit updates are basically just going to tell you where the sun energy is. So like what gate energetically, what gift the sun is in, which is probably the more of the primary focus when you're doing a transit update. It's kind of like getting an astrology update. Like when you learn, oh, okay, like this is what's happening astrologically. We have a Mercury retrograde or something like that. It's the same exact thing, except you're learning what energy gift the sun is in, and also the earth. But the sun more importantly. And sometimes it's helpful to know about this because you can utilize the energy of what's happening around you. So, for example, a week or two ago, we were in the energy gift of one of them was the energy gift of being the fighter. And then the other one was being the energy gift of provocation. So provoking, right? So this was a week, okay, that I could feel it happening. Like I wanted to argue about so many things. Like there are so many things coming up, and I was just like, I wanted to like had something to say about it all of a sudden. But I kept catching myself. I was like, no, like this is just the energy that's in the air. You're meant to use it for the highest expression, which if there's something to fight over that's going to make a difference in the collective or going to help you to create a mission statement behind your business, or let's say you, for example, provoking the gate of provocation, using that consciously, meaning that there's no emotion behind it. You're not emotionally driven to provoke someone. Instead, you're just detached, but you feel like I could say a little something to like nudge this person in the right direction. They might not quite like it, but I could just kind of help them just by dropping this. That's an excellent use of that gate. So it's just knowing a little bit more about what's happening in the astrological weather, human design wise, is going to help you know how to navigate the energy that week. So that's really what it comes down to with the HD transit updates. And I do those for free on Facebook. Like it's just to kind of like, hey, this is what's going on. And then what I notice it helps people do is they look at their chart and they'll say like, oh, I have this gift. And then that kind of connects them to their own chart. And they'll say like, oh, interesting. Like this is a primary gift for me, or this is something that I have. And like, so now I know I have it, or I don't have it, but my kid has it. So it just helps you also to learn a little bit about your body graph and your human design as well.
Oh yeah, you just brought it in children. Yes, if you have children, it's so helpful to know their human
So
design.
helpful.
Same with partnership, anything. And also, I've even brought it into business and how I hire people and put them in the right positions on the bus and stuff like that. So there's so many conversations we could have about this, but thank you, Jen, for being here. You are such a gift to this world. You're so open-hearted and you're just so service-oriented. And I love experiencing this version of you. I love the one before too, but this one is like this you're so warm and glowy, and you were before like nothing, not a ton has changed. It's the essence, right? It's the essence. And I love how authentic you are and how you're just no BS. And that's one of the things that I love about you is that you are just real. You're just real and pure with who you are. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. If anyone wants to learn more or dive deeper into this, you can definitely check Jen out in all the places. She's all over the place. We'll share all the links below. Also, we have the Red Lotus Life membership if you would like to come in there, where we do self-clearing, we do emotional clearing, we do human design. You're going to learn about your design and how to live your design. And it's just life-changing in every way. So thank you, Jen, for being here with us. And until next time, bye.
Bye. Bye.
And live your life today.